In the world of K-pop, one accusation never dies: lip syncing. But out of all 7 BTS members, who gets dragged the most by haters for supposedly faking their vocals? Is it the member with the most powerful voice, or the one so stable that people refuse to believe it's real? What if number 1 belongs to someone who's been proving haters wrong since debut, yet still can't catch a break? And here's the twist. Does being accused the most mean they're the worst, or so good that people can't handle it? Who's chilling at number 7 with minor shade, and who's been drowning in accusations at the top? Trust me, that number 1 spot is gonna hit different. Let's get into it.
Number 7. Sugar. You know what's funny? When people talk about lip syncing in BTS, Min Yoongi's name almost never comes up, and there's a brutally honest reason for that. See, Sugar has built his entire career, his entire identity on one thing that's almost impossible to fake: raw, unfiltered aggression in his delivery. We're talking about a man who spits bars like he's having a personal conversation with every demon he's ever faced. And if you've ever watched him perform live, like really watched him, you'd know that his breathing patterns, his ad-libs, his little grunts between lines, they're so distinctly human, so imperfect in the most perfect way that no backing track in the world could replicate that energy. And that's why he sits at number 7. Not because he's irrelevant to this conversation, but because haters literally can't find an angle to attack him on this front. Let's break it down. Go all the way back to 2013, when BTS was still a rookie group performing in small venues with terrible sound systems. While a lot of idols relied on heavy backing tracks just to survive those early chaotic stages, Sugar was out there practically screaming into the mic during tracks like No More Dream and We Are Bulletproof Part 2. You could hear the raspiness in his voice cracking at the edges. You could hear him gasping for air between verses. And that's not a flaw. That's called being real. Haters had nothing to work with because the evidence of live performance was literally baked into every imperfection. And here's a fact that a lot of casual fans don't know. Sugar has always been one of the members who's most vocal about the importance of live performance. In multiple interviews, particularly during the Wings era around 2016 and the Love Yourself era in 2018, he's talked about how hip-hop, at its core, is about authenticity. He's mentioned how growing up listening to Epic High, Nas, and other raw lyricists shaped his belief that if you can't deliver it live, you have no business putting it on a track. That philosophy isn't just talk. It shows up in every single concert, every festival stage, every award show performance. During the Map of the Soul tour in 2020, before COVID shut everything down, there were fan-captured recordings of Sugar performing De Tuita with such ferocity that his voice was literally echoing differently in the venue compared to the studio version. The tempo shifts, the vocal inflections, the way he'd add extra syllables or elongate certain words for dramatic effect. These are things that cannot happen if someone is lip-syncing. It's physically, technically, logically impossible. A lip-sync performance plays one track at one speed with one energy. But Sugar, he's out there treating every stage like it's his last, adjusting in real time, reacting to the crowd's energy, sometimes speeding up his flow, sometimes dragging it out to build tension. That's a live performer, period. Now, does he get 0 accusations? Not exactly. There have been isolated moments, and I mean truly isolated, like finding a needle in a haystack, where some trolls online tried to claim that during certain music show performances, particularly the ones on Inkigayo or Music Bank, where all groups use pre-recorded backing tracks as standard industry practice, that Sugar was just moving his lips. But here's where the argument falls apart every single time. Those music shows are known for requiring backing tracks as part of their broadcast format. It's not a BTS thing, it's not a Sugar thing. It's literally how Korean music shows operate for audio mixing and broadcast quality purposes. Every single group, from EXO to 17 to Twice to aespa, uses backing tracks on those stages.
So pointing at Suga during a music show and saying he's lip-syncing is like pointing at a fish in water and saying, "Look, it's wet." It's meaningless. It's a non-argument. And the few haters who tried it got absolutely demolished by armies who pulled up concert footage, fan cam audio, and behind-the-scenes clips showing Suga's real-time vocal output. One of the most legendary moments in the Suga is definitely live argument came from the 2019 Melon Music Awards. During BTS's iconic 37-minute performance, which is still talked about as one of the greatest award show stages in K-pop, Suga performed his solo verse with a level of intensity that visibly left him out of breath afterward. You could see his chest heaving, you could see the sweat pouring down his face, and most importantly, you could hear the slight vocal fatigue creeping into his later lines. That's not something you can fake. A lip-sync performance sounds pristine from start to finish, but Suga's delivery had that beautiful arc of human endurance, strong at the start, slightly strained by the end, but never once losing the emotion or the power behind his words. It was raw, it was real, and it shut down any remaining doubters.
Number 6. RM. Now this is where the conversation starts to get a little more nuanced, because at number 6, we've got the man, the myth, the walking encyclopedia himself, Kim Namjoon, BTS's leader, RM. And before you raise an eyebrow and ask, wait, people accuse RM of lip-syncing? Yeah, they do. Not a lot, not consistently, but enough to earn him the number 6 spot on this list. And the reason why he gets these accusations is actually way more interesting than you think. See, RM occupies this weird space in the lip-sync debate because he's a rapper who has gradually evolved into something more than just a rapper. Over the years, especially from the Love Yourself era onward, Namjoon started incorporating more melodic elements into his performances, singing hooks, delivering softer vocal passages, blending rap and melody in ways that pushed him outside his original lane. And that transition is exactly where haters found their opening. When RM is straight up rapping, like full-throttle, aggressive spitfire bars, nobody questions him. His delivery is too distinctive, too laced with his signature deep tone and intellectual cadence for anyone to seriously believe it's pre-recorded. But when he shifts into those melodic moments, when he's singing a hook on Trivia, Love, or delivering the emotional bridge on Microcosmos, that's when the trolls come crawling out of the woodwork, claiming that, oh, he's definitely using a track for that part. And here's why that accusation, while slightly more frequent than Suga's, still doesn't hold up under any serious scrutiny. Let's talk about one of the most undeniable pieces of evidence in RM's favor: his mistakes. Yes, you heard that right. RM's live mistakes are actually his greatest defense against lip-sync accusations, and there's a beautiful irony in that. This is a man who has, on multiple documented occasions, forgotten lyrics on stage. Not in a catastrophic way, but in that very human, very real, oh shoot, what comes next kind of way, where he'll stumble for half a second, ad-lib something, laugh at himself, and then jump right back into the song. One of the most famous instances happened during a concert in the Wings tour era, where RM blanked on a verse and literally just started freestyling until he found his place again. The crowd went wild, and you know what? That moment alone is worth more than 1,000 arguments, because you can't forget lyrics to a backing track. If he was lip-syncing, the track would keep playing perfectly while his mouth stopped moving, and the whole illusion would shatter instantly. But that never happens with RM. When he stumbles, the audio stumbles with him, because it's coming from his mouth in real time, raw and unfiltered. There's also the issue of RM's breathing patterns during performances, which is something that vocal analysts and music producers have actually pointed out in fan-made breakdown videos on YouTube. RM has a very specific way of managing his breath during rap-heavy songs. He takes these sharp, audible inhales between lines, especially during fast-paced tracks like Tear and Outro Tear. And those breath sounds are never in the studio version. They're artifacts of live performance, of a human body pushing through a demanding stage while trying to maintain vocal clarity. Now, let's address the specific accusations head-on. The majority of RM's lip-sync accusations come from, you guessed it, Korean music show performances.
And we already established in number 7 that music shows operate on a completely different standard than concerts. The backing track is part of the broadcast infrastructure, not a reflection of the artist's ability. But with RM, haters have tried to be a little more creative in their attacks. Some have pointed to moments during award show performances where RM's vocal output during melodic sections sounds too clean or too polished compared to his usual live tone. And you know what? There's actually a technical explanation for that has nothing to do with lip syncing. During major award shows like Mama, MMA, and the Golden Disc Awards, BTS uses in-ear monitors with carefully calibrated audio mixes that include their own vocal feed plus a backing track blend. This is standard practice across all major performing artists worldwide, from Beyoncé to Bruno Mars to Adele during her live tours.
Number 5. J-Hope. All right. Now we're getting into the zone where things start to heat up, because at number 5, we have the one and only Jungkook, J-Hope, the man who makes performing look so effortless that people genuinely struggle to believe a human being can do what he does on stage. And that right there, that's exactly the problem. See, J-Hope sits at this fascinating intersection in BTS, where he's not just a rapper, he's not just a dancer, he's the group's performance engine, the member who brings the most raw, explosive, kinetic energy to every single stage. And it's that very energy that has put a target on his back from haters who simply cannot wrap their heads around the idea that someone can dance that hard, move that aggressively, and still deliver clean vocals at the same time. The accusation against J-Hope is different from what we saw with Suga and RM. With those two, the lip sync claims were weak and scattered, barely a blip on the radar. But with J-Hope, haters have latched on to a very specific argument that sounds logical on the surface but completely falls apart when you dig deeper. There's no way he can rap and dance like that simultaneously without a backing track doing the heavy lifting. And honestly, if you don't know anything about performance technique, breath control, or J-Hope's insane training background, that argument might actually sound convincing for about 3 seconds. But let's destroy it with facts. First, let's talk about something that most casual viewers don't realize. J-Hope's dance training started when he was a child. Before BTS, before big hit entertainment, before any of this idol life, Hoseok was already a street dancer in Gwangju, competing in underground dance battles and winning awards at a regional and national level. He was part of a street dance crew called Neuron, and the style he specialized in, popping, locking, and freestyle, requires an insane level of body control and rhythmic awareness. And here's the key detail. Street dancers perform to live music all the time. They're trained to sync their bodies with unpredictable beats, adapt in real time, and maintain physical composure under extreme exertion. That foundation is what allows J-Hope to dance at maximum intensity while still maintaining vocal delivery, because his body learned how to manage energy output years before he ever stepped foot in a big hit training room. This isn't natural talent alone. This is over a decade of physical conditioning that haters completely ignore when they make their lip sync accusations. Now let's talk about the moment that should have permanently ended this debate but somehow didn't. J-Hope's headline performance at Lollapalooza, Chicago on July 31st, 2022. Let that sink in for a second. J-Hope became the first South Korean artist to headline a major American music festival. And he didn't just show up and do a cute little set. He delivered a 90-minute performance that included full choreography, live band integration, crowd interaction, freestyle segments, and back-to-back high-energy tracks from his solo album Jack in the Box, plus BTS hits. And here's the part that matters for this discussion. Lollapalooza is an outdoor festival. The audio setup is different from a controlled concert venue or TV broadcast studio. The microphones pick up everything: wind, crowd noise, the artist's breathing, vocal cracks, everything. There's nowhere to hide at a festival stage. If you're lip syncing, the outdoor acoustics will expose you faster than any fan cam ever could. And what did the world hear during J-Hope's set?
They heard him gasping for breath between songs. They heard his voice crack slightly during the emotional delivery of Arson. They heard him screaming ad-libs that weren't in any studio version. Raw, spontaneous, crowd-driven moments where he'd yell, "Chicago, let's go," or "one more time," with a voice that was clearly fatigued but still pushing through. They heard him adjust his flow during Chicken Noodle Soup to match the crowd's energy, slowing down at certain points to let the audience sing along, then ramping back up with a ferocity that no pre-recorded track could match. Multiple professional sound engineers and music producers analyzed the Lollapalooza audio feed afterward and confirmed what anyone with functioning ears already knew. J-Hope was performing live, and the slight imperfections in his delivery were proof positive of real-time vocal output. But here's why J-Hope still lands at number 5 despite all this evidence, because the music show factor hits him harder than Suga or RM. Because J-Hope is the member who dances the most intensely during group performances, his vocal output during Korean music show stages, where backing tracks are mandatory and standard, tends to be the most blended with the track. During songs like Idol, Fire, Boy with Love, and Butter, J-Hope's dance choreography sections are so physically demanding that his live microphone audio naturally gets partially buried under the backing track in the broadcast mix. Haters screenshot those specific moments and blast them online with captions like, "See, he's not even singing, the track is doing everything," completely ignoring the fact that the broadcast audio mixing is controlled by the show's sound engineers, not by BTS or J-Hope himself. The sound engineer's job is to make the broadcast sound clean and polished for TV viewers, so they'll naturally boost the backing track during high movement sections to prevent heavy breathing and audio distortion from being aired live. It's standard practice, it's done for every group, and it has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not the artist is actually singing. But haters don't care about context. They care about clips, screenshots, and gotcha moments taken completely out of context. There's also the matter of J-Hope's vocal evolution over the years, which has given haters additional, albeit still weak, ammunition. In BTS's earlier years, J-Hope's role was primarily rapping, and his vocal parts were minimal. But as the group matured, he started taking on more singing lines, particularly in tracks like Daydream, Ego, and later his solo material. And similar to what we discussed with RM at number 6, the moment a rapper starts singing, the lip sync patrol goes into overdrive. People who were used to hearing J-Hope spit rapid-fire bars, suddenly hearing him deliver smooth melodies couldn't compute, and instead of acknowledging his growth as an artist, they defaulted to, "It must be fake." The irony is almost poetic. The better J-Hope got, the more people accused him of faking it. Let's also give credit to something that flies under the radar but is incredibly important. J-Hope's solo concert tour, Hope on the Street, and his various live performances during his military-humiliating hiatus promotions showed a performer who was completely comfortable being raw and unfiltered. His live performance of On the Street with J. Cole's verse playing while he delivered his own parts live was a masterclass in blending pre-recorded elements, J. Cole wasn't physically there, with genuine live vocals. The audience could clearly distinguish between the recorded feature and J-Hope's live output, and that transparency is the mark of an artist who has nothing to hide. He didn't try to make it seamless, he let the audience hear the difference between what was live and what was recorded, and that honesty is the strongest rebuttal to any lip sync accusation. So J-Hope holds steady at number 5, more accused than the other two rappers because his dance intensity creates a convenient smokescreen for haters, but still protected by an overwhelming body of evidence that proves his live authenticity beyond any reasonable doubt. The Lollapalooza performance alone should have been the final nail in this coffin, but haters gonna hate, and J-Hope keeps dancing anyway. Now, from here, we leave the rap line and enter the vocal line territory. And let me tell you, the accusations get significantly louder, the evidence gets more complex, and the emotional stakes get way higher. Who's at number 4? Is it the member whose voice is so uniquely textured that studio and live sound like two different people? Or the one whose high notes are so consistent that they seem almost inhuman? One thing's for sure, from this point on, every spot on this list comes with serious heat. Let's go.
Number 4. Jen. And just like that, we've crossed into the vocal line. And the first member from BTS's vocal line to appear on this list is none other than Kim Seok-jin, the man who was scouted off the street for his face, but built a legacy with his voice. And if you're wondering why Jin sits at number 4, not higher, not lower, but right here in the middle, it's because his lip sync story is one of the most frustrating, most misunderstood, and honestly, most unfair narratives in this entire ranking. Let me explain. Jin's relationship with lip sync accusations is deeply tied to something that has followed him since the very beginning of his career, the perception that he's just the visual. When Big Hit Entertainment first recruited Kim Seok-jin, it wasn't because he walked in and belted a perfect high note. It was because a casting agent saw him stepping off a bus near Konkuk University and thought, that face needs to be on stage. Jin himself has told the story multiple times, including in the 2018 Festa dinner and various V-Lives, and he's always been refreshingly transparent about the fact that he entered Big Hit with virtually zero musical training, no vocal lessons, no dance background, no performance experience, just a handsome face and a willingness to work harder than anyone expected him to. And that origin story became the foundation for every lip sync accusation he's ever received, because haters built their entire argument on a simple but deeply flawed premise. He wasn't even a real singer when he started, so how can he possibly be singing live now? It's a narrative rooted in 2013 that completely ignores a decade of growth, training, and vocal development, and it drives ARMYs absolutely insane. Let's rewind to the early years and be honest about something. In BTS's rookie era, 2013 to roughly 2015, Jin's vocal parts were noticeably smaller compared to Jungkook and the other vocalists. Songs like No More Dream, Boy in Love, and Danger gave him limited lines, and during live performances, his sections were often shorter and positioned in less vocally demanding parts of the song. Haters use this as ammunition. See, even the company knows he can't sing. That's why he barely gets lines. But those critics fail to acknowledge the reason behind the line distribution. It wasn't that Jin couldn't sing, it was that BTS's early discography was heavily hip-hop focused, and the production style naturally favored the rap line. Jin was learning, growing, training behind the scenes with vocal coaches, spending hours in the practice room, refining a skill that didn't come to him naturally. And when the shift happened, when BTS's music evolved and Jin's voice was finally given room to breathe, the results were absolutely stunning, and the haters were not ready. The turning point came with Awake in 2016, Jin's solo track on the Wings album. This was the first time the general public truly heard what Kim Seok-jin was capable of when given a song that matched his vocal color and emotional range. Awake is a ballad about acknowledging your limitations but refusing to give up, and Jin performed it with a vulnerability that no backing track could ever replicate. During the Wings tour, his live performances of Awake became the stuff of legend, his voice trembling with real emotion, his eyes visibly tearing up, his high notes soaring through the venue with that distinctive warm, slightly nasal tone that is uniquely his. Fan cams from those performances went viral, and vocal coaches on YouTube started doing reaction videos specifically pointing out the micro variations in his delivery that proved beyond any doubt that he was singing live. The slight pitch wavering on the sustained notes, the way his vibrato was shift depending on how emotional he was feeling that night, the barely audible breath catches before the climatic high notes. These are the fingerprints of live performance that simply cannot exist in a pre-recorded track. But the real nail in the coffin, the performance that should have permanently retired any lip-sync accusation against Jin, was Epiphany. Released in 2018 as the opening track of Love Yourself Answer, Epiphany became Jin's signature song, and its live performances during the Love Yourself World Tour were nothing short of extraordinary. The song requires Jin to hit sustained high notes repeatedly, build through multiple emotional peaks, and deliver a vocal climax that sits right at the top of his range. And every single night, in every single city, Jin delivered it differently. Not dramatically different, but with those subtle, beautiful human variations that prove live singing. A slightly sharper note in Seoul, a more breathed-out approach in Los Angeles, a fuller chest voice in London, a more delicate head voice in Tokyo.
Fans who attended multiple tour stops documented these differences obsessively, creating videos that showed how Jin's epiphany was a living, breathing performance that evolved with his mood, his physical condition, and the energy of each audience. You simply cannot get those variations from a lip-sync performance. It's impossible. It defies the basic physics of how audio playback works. So why does Jin still sit at number 4 despite all this evidence? Because haters have one card they keep playing, and unfortunately, it's a card that resonates with casual observers who don't dig deeper. His dancing sections. Here's the reality. Jin has always been the first to admit that dancing is his weakest area. He's joked about it countless times, calling himself the member with the least natural rhythm and turning his dance struggles into endearing comedic moments. But during BTS's most choreography-heavy tracks, Idol, On, Black Swan, and Butter, Jin is performing the same intense choreography as every other member, while also being expected to sing. And during those high movement moments on music show stages, his live vocal output naturally decreases because, again, the broadcast sound engineers blend the backing track more heavily during dance breaks. Haters clip exactly those moments, strip away all context, and present it as if it's the complete picture. It's cherry-picking at its finest, and it's intellectually dishonest. There's another layer to Jin's story that makes the lip-sync accusation particularly painful, and it's the vocal cord injury narrative. In 2022, before his military enlistment, Jin revealed that he had been dealing with vocal cord issues that affected his voice. He had been going through procedures and had been managing the condition while still performing at the highest level. The fact that Jin was fighting through physical pain to sing live for his fans makes the lip-sync accusation not just wrong, but genuinely cruel. This is a man who was fighting through physical pain to sing live for his fans, and haters responded by saying he was faking it. The disconnection between reality and accusation has never been more stark. And let's not forget the post-military Jin. After his discharge, his live performances showed a renewed vocal confidence, his tone warmer, his control more refined, his emotional delivery more mature. The growth was audible, and it was real, because growth doesn't happen in a lip-synced performance. You can't fake improvement. You can't fake the way a voice matures and develops over years of practice and experience. Jin's vocal journey from 2013 to now is one of the most inspiring growth arcs in K-pop history, and every step of that journey is documented in live performances that prove his authenticity over and over again. So Jin holds number 4, more accused than the rap line because of his visual-first origin story and his admitted dance limitations, but fiercely defended by a body of live evidence that reveals a vocalist who earned his place through sheer determination. But from here, the accusations double in intensity. Number 3 features a member whose voice is so deep, so unique, so unlike anything in mainstream K-pop that people literally can't decide if what they're hearing is real or manufactured. Who could it be? Think deep. Think really deep. Let's move.
Number 3, BTS V. And here we go, number 3. And if you've been paying attention to the clue I dropped at the end of number 4, you already know who this is. Kim Taehyung, V, the owner of what is arguably the most unique, most polarizing, most debated vocal tone in the entire K-pop industry. A voice so deep, so rich, so impossibly velvety that when people hear it for the first time, their immediate reaction isn't, "Wow, he's talented." It's, "Wait, is that real?" And that right there is the cruel irony of Taehyung's entire career. His greatest gift, that once-in-a-generation baritone that sits in a register almost no other K-pop idol occupies, is the exact same thing that fuels the majority of his lip-sync accusations. The very thing that makes him special is the thing haters use against him. And the deeper we dig into this, the more infuriating it gets. Let's start with the fundamental issue. Taehyung's voice doesn't sound like it belongs in K-pop. And I don't mean that as an insult, I mean it as a statement of acoustic reality. The K-pop industry, historically and structurally, has been built around bright, high-pitched vocal tones. The tenors, the high-note belters, the falsetto specialist. Those are the voices that Korean pop production has traditionally been engineered around.
Studio recording techniques, mixing standards, auto-tune calibration, backing track levels. All of these technical elements are optimized for voices in the upper register. So when Taehyung steps into a recording booth with that deep, resonant, almost jazz baritone timbre, the production process has to work differently to accommodate his unique tone. The EQ settings are different, the reverb treatment is different, the way his voice sits in the mix relative to the instrumental is different. And the result? His studio recordings and his live performances can sometimes sound like they're coming from two completely different people. And that discrepancy, that gap between what Taehyung sounds like on a polished studio track versus what he sounds like singing raw into a live microphone, is the #1 weapon in every hater's arsenal. His live voice doesn't match the recording, so he must be lip-syncing when it sounds too good. It's an argument that sounds logical if you know absolutely nothing about vocal production, audio engineering, or the basic physics of how different frequencies interact with different acoustic environments. But for anyone with even a surface-level understanding of music production, the discrepancy between studio and live is not evidence of lip-syncing. It's evidence of good production doing its job in the studio and a real voice doing its job on stage. Let's talk about Stigma. Released in 2016 on the Wings album, Stigma was Taehyung's first solo track that truly showcased the full range and emotional depth of his voice. The song sits in a challenging register that requires him to transition between his deep chest voice and a more strained emotional upper range. And the live performances during the Wings tour were revelatory. Because here's what happened every single night. Taehyung would start the song in that low, controlled, almost whispered tone that gave the audience chills, and then as the song built toward its emotional climax, his voice would crack. Not every night, not in the same place, but consistently enough that fans started cataloging the Stigma cracks as proof of his live singing. And they were right to do so, because those cracks were happening at the exact moments where his voice was being pushed to its upper limits, the transition point between chest voice and head voice that every vocalist struggles with. A lip-synced performance doesn't crack. A lip-synced performance plays the same polished studio take at the same perfect pitch every single time. Taehyung's Stigma cracked differently in Seoul than it did in Manila, differently in Tokyo than it did in Newark, and each crack told the same story. This man is singing live, pushing his voice to its absolute limits, and letting the audience witness the raw, unperfect beauty of a real human vocal performance. Then came Singularity in 2018, and this is where the lip-sync debate around Taehyung exploded to a whole new level. Singularity was a neo-soul track with a choreography concept that involves Taehyung dancing with a suit jacket, using it almost like a partner, performing fluid, contemporary-style movements that are more art piece than typical K-pop dance. The choreography is visually stunning, and that's part of the problem, because the choreography for Singularity is so intricate, so focused on controlled body movements, that Taehyung performs it with a level of physical composure that makes it look like he's barely exerting effort. And when a performer looks like they're not working hard physically, but the vocal output sounds clean and controlled, the hater brain immediately goes to, he's lip-syncing. There's no way he's dancing and singing that smoothly. But here's the technical reality that completely dismantles that argument. Singularity is not a physically demanding dance in the cardiovascular sense. It's not idle, where members are jumping and stomping and burning through their oxygen reserves. Singularity is a controlled performance, closer to contemporary dance than hip-hop choreography, and the physical exertion required is more about muscle control and fluidity than cardio endurance. Taehyung can absolutely sing through Singularity because the choreography isn't stealing his breath the way a high-impact dance would. Haters looked at the performance, saw a man dancing and singing without gasping for air, and assumed it was fake, when in reality, the choreography was specifically designed to allow for vocal delivery. It's choreographic intention, not lip-sync deception.
Now let's fast forward to the era that gave Taehyung the most lip-sync heat he's ever received, his solo activities and the release of Layover in 2023. Layover was a mini-album that leaned heavily on Taehyung's jazz and R&B influences, featuring tracks like Slow Dancing, Rainy Days, and Love Me Again that lived entirely in his deep baritone comfort zone. The album was stunning, but the promotional performances sparked a firestorm of debate. During music show appearances for Slow Dancing, haters clipped moments where Taehyung's mouth movements seemed slightly out of sync with the audio, and those clips went viral on social media platforms, racking up millions of views with captions declaring proof that V lip syncs. But here's what those clips conveniently left out: the broadcast delay factor. Live television broadcasts, especially music shows filmed in studios with complex camera switching systems, often have a slight audio-visual delay, sometimes as small as 0.1 to 0.3 seconds, that can make a performer's mouth appear out of sync with the audio, even when they're singing completely live. This is a known technical issue in broadcast engineering, and it affects every performer on every music show, not just V. Professional broadcast engineers have explained this phenomenon multiple times on social media and in interviews, but haters either don't know or don't care, because the out-of-sync clips serve their narrative too perfectly to let facts get in the way. And then there are the V-Lives. Oh, the V-Lives. If there is one thing that should permanently, irrevocably, eternally shut down every lip-sync accusation against Kim Taehyung, it's his V-Live singing sessions. Over the years, Taehyung has done dozens of live broadcasts where he casually picks up a guitar or sits at a piano and just sings. No backing track, no production, no engineering, no choreography, no nothing. Just his raw voice in a quiet room, captured by a phone microphone with zero processing. And in those moments, his voice is exactly what you'd expect from hearing his studio work. Deep, warm, slightly raspy, emotionally textured, and undistinguishably his. The tone matches, the timbre matches, the emotional quality matches. There is no gap between Studio Taehyung and Raw V Live Taehyung that can't be explained by normal production differences. He sounds like himself because he is himself, singing with his own vocal cords, producing sound through his own throat, breathing with his own lungs. The evidence is overwhelming, and yet Taehyung sits at number 3 because his unique voice invites skepticism from people who don't understand that a deep baritone in K-pop is unusual, not fake. His voice is so different from the industry norm that people's brains short-circuit and default to disbelief. And that is the tragedy of being too unique in an industry that rewards conformity. But now we enter the top 2, and trust me, the intensity goes through the roof. Number 2 features a member whose live vocals are so impossibly perfect, so consistently flawless, that the accusations come not from sounding bad, but from sounding too good. Can you guess who? Let's find out.
Number 2, Jungkook. We are here, number 2. And if you've been riding this list from the beginning, you've watched the accusations grow from barely noticeable at number 7 all the way to constant and relentless. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, could have prepared you for the paradox that is Jungkook's position on this list. Because here's the thing about Jungkook that makes his lip sync accusations fundamentally different from every other member we've discussed so far. He doesn't get accused because he sounds bad live. He doesn't get accused because his voice sounds different from the studio version. He doesn't get accused because of broadcast delays or music show mixing or dance-heavy choreography masking his vocals. No, Jungkook gets accused of lip-syncing because he sounds too damn good. Let that sink in for a moment. We are talking about a human being whose live vocal performances are so stable, so consistent, so flawlessly executed that millions of people across the internet have looked at the evidence and concluded that can't be real. No one sounds that perfect live. He has to be lip-syncing. And the absolute insanity of that accusation, the fact that being too talented is somehow evidence of cheating, is what makes Jungkook's spot at number 2 one of the most fascinating
fascinating and heartbreaking positions on this entire list. Let's go back to the beginning, because understanding why Jungkook sounds the way he does requires understanding where he came from. Jungkook auditioned for the Korean talent show Superstar K3 in 2011 at the age of 13. He didn't make it far in the competition, but his audition caught the attention of 7 different entertainment agencies who all offered him a spot as a trainee. 7 at 13 years old. He chose Big Hit Entertainment, reportedly because he was inspired by watching RM rap, and from that moment on, his training was relentless. Big Hit sent him to Los Angeles to train in dance and vocal performance. He worked with vocal coaches who specialized in breath control, projection, and the art of singing while moving. He spent years, not months, not a quick boot camp, but years building the foundation that would eventually make him the most complete performer in BTS. And it's that foundation that creates the problem haters have with him. Because when you train that intensely for that long, starting at that young an age, the result is a performer whose live output is so polished that it approaches studio quality. Not because it's fake, but because the gap between his trained live ability and the studio version is simply smaller than it is for most other artists. He's not lip-syncing, he's just that good, and people can't handle it. Let's talk about the evidence. Let's talk about the FIFA World Cup Qatar 2022 opening ceremony, the single biggest stage of Jungkook's career and arguably the most watched live performance by any BTS member ever. On November 20th, 2022, Jungkook performed Dreamers in front of a global audience of over 3 billion viewers at Al Bayt Stadium. 3 billion. This wasn't a music show with controlled audio mixing. This wasn't a concert with a trusted sound crew who'd been working with BTS for years. This was a FIFA production on a FIFA stage with FIFA's audio engineers handling the sound. The pressure was incomprehensible. One bad note, one vocal crack, one audible stumble, and it would be seen by half the planet. And what did Jungkook deliver? A performance so clean, so powerful, so vocally assured that the first reaction from millions of viewers worldwide wasn't, "Wow, he's talented." It was, "He's definitely lip-syncing. Nobody sounds that good live in a stadium that big." The accusations flooded social media within minutes of the performance ending. Twitter, Reddit, YouTube comments, TikTok, everywhere you looked, people were debating whether Jungkook was singing live or not. And then the behind-the-scenes footage dropped. FIFA's own production team released clips showing Jungkook in rehearsals, warming up his voice, doing sound checks, adjusting his in-ear monitors, and most critically, there was footage of him singing during the actual performance where you could see his throat muscles working, his diaphragm contracting, and his mouth movements perfectly synced with the audio in a way that only happens during live singing. Multiple audio engineers analyzed the broadcast feed and identified the telltale signs of live vocal performance: slight reverb variations caused by his head movement relative to the microphone, barely perceptible pitch fluctuations during sustained notes, and the presence of breath sounds that were not in the studio version of Dreamers. The verdict from professionals was unanimous. Jungkook was singing live. The haters simply couldn't accept that a 25-year-old K-pop idol could command a stage of that magnitude with that level of vocal precision. But here's where it gets even more absurd. The World Cup performance wasn't an anomaly. It wasn't Jungkook having one great night. This is how he performs all the time, and that consistency is what fuels the never-ending cycle of accusations. Go to YouTube right now and search Jungkook Fan Cam for literally any BTS concert. Pick any city, any year, any song, and you will find live audio that sounds almost indistinguishable from the studio version. His Euphoria performances during the Love Yourself tour are the most cited example. Euphoria is a vocally demanding song with sustained high notes, rapid melodic runs, and an emotional crescendo that requires pinpoint breath control. And Jungkook performs it while running across the stage, flying on wires above the audience, and interacting with fans, all without his vocal quality dropping even 1%.
Fan cams from different tour stops show the same thing every single night. Pristine vocals with the tiniest variations that confirm live performance. A slightly breathier approach in one city, a touch more vibrato in another, a fraction of a second longer on a held note here, a slightly different ad-lib there. The variations are small because Jungkook's consistency is inhuman, but they're there and they matter because a lip-synced track produces zero variation. Zero. The same performance, the same audio, every single time. Jungkook's performances are 99% consistent with 1% human variation, and that 1% is the smoking gun that proves he's live. Then there's the solo era, 7, 3D, Standing Next to You, and the live promotional performances that accompanied them in 2023. Jungkook appeared on shows like Today Show in New York, performed on BBC Radio 1's Live Lounge, and did multiple live stages across global platforms. The BBC Live Lounge performance is particularly significant because Live Lounge is famous for being completely live. No backing tracks, no safety nets, just the artist, a microphone, and a live band. It's one of the most respected live performance platforms in the music world, and artists who appear on it are essentially putting their vocal credibility on the line with zero room for fakery. And Jungkook didn't just survive, he thrived. His voice filled the room with a warmth and power that had the BBC crew visibly impressed, and the minor imperfections, a slightly off-pitch moment on one run, a breath that came a beat early on one phrase, were the beautiful proof that this was a real human voice doing extraordinary things in real time. What makes Jungkook's situation at number 2 so uniquely painful is the psychological trap it creates. If he sounds imperfect live, haters say, see, he needs a backing track, he can't sing. If he sounds perfect live, haters say, see, he's lip-syncing, nobody sounds that good live. It's an unwinnable scenario, a closed loop of criticism where excellence is punished and imperfection is weaponized. The goalposts move every time he proves himself, and the standard he's held to is one that literally no other artist on the planet is expected to meet. He could perform live on the surface of the moon with NASA confirming the audio feed, and someone would still comment the acoustics in space are different, probably lip-synced. That's the curse of being the golden Marqueño. You're so good at everything that people refuse to believe any of it is real. And here's where it gets really emotional. Despite all of these accusations, despite years of being told that his greatest strength is a lie, Jungkook has never publicly complained about it. He doesn't make bitter posts on social media. He doesn't call out haters in interviews. He just keeps performing. He keeps showing up. He keeps delivering vocal performances that would silence any reasonable critic, knowing full well that unreasonable critics will never be silenced. That quiet resilience, that refusal to let the noise distract him from his craft, that is what separates Jungkook from the conversation and elevates him beyond it. He doesn't need to defend himself because every single performance is his defense, delivered live in real time with the receipts embedded in every breath and every note. So Jungkook holds number 2, the member accused of lip-syncing not because of weakness, but because of a strength so overwhelming that the world literally can't believe it's real. But now we arrive at number 1, the member who sits at the very top of this list, who has been accused more than anyone else, whose lip-sync controversy has been the loudest, the most persistent, the most emotionally charged debate in BTS's entire history. And when I tell you that number 1 says it all, I mean it. Everything we've discussed, every accusation, every defense, every piece of evidence, it all converges at this final spot. Are you ready? Because this one is gonna hit.
Number 1, Jimin. And here we are, the summit, the peak, the one spot on this list that was never in doubt, never up for debate, never a surprise to anyone who has spent even a single day in the trenches of K-pop discourse. Number 1, Park Jimin, the member of BTS who has been accused of lip-syncing more times, more aggressively, more relentlessly, and more cruelly than any other idol in the modern history of Korean pop music. And I need you to understand something before we dive into this list. Jimin's position at the top of this list isn't just about frequency of accusations, it's about the nature of those accusations. It's about the way an entire subsection of the internet has built a cottage industry around attacking his vocal ability. It's about how a man who has dedicated his life to the art of performance, who trained his body and voice to do things that most humans physically cannot, has been repaid with a level of scrutiny and hatred that goes beyond criticism and enters the territory of systematic, targeted abuse. This is the story of the most controversial voice in K-pop, and by the time we're done, you're gonna understand exactly why number one says it all. Let's start with the root of everything, the thing that makes Jimin's lip-sync accusations unique, the thing that separates his controversy from every other member on this list, his voice itself. Park Jimin does not have a conventional K-pop voice. He doesn't have Jungkook's clean, stable power. He doesn't have Jin's warm resonance. He doesn't have V's deep baritone richness. What Jimin has is something far more divisive, far more polarizing, and far more misunderstood. A high-pitched, breathy, deliberately airy vocal tone that sits in a register most male K-pop idols don't even attempt to touch. His voice is light. It floats. It whispers even when it's loud. It has a quality that vocal coaches describe as intentionally ethereal, a stylistic choice rooted in contemporary and modern vocal technique, where breathiness is not a flaw, but a tool used to convey vulnerability, intimacy, and emotional fragility. And that stylistic choice, that deliberate, artistic, trained decision to sing in a way that prioritizes emotion over raw power is what has made Jimin the single biggest target for lip-sync accusations in BTS's history. Because here's what haters do. They take Jimin's breathy tone and reframe it as evidence of weakness. He sounds out of breath becomes he can't sing. His voice is airy becomes he's not actually producing sound. The backing track is doing the work. He doesn't belt like other vocalists becomes he doesn't have the ability to sing live. Every single characteristic of Jimin's vocal identity, the very things that make his voice unique and artistically distinctive, has been weaponized against him by people who either don't understand vocal technique or actively choose to ignore it. And the result is a decade-long campaign of doubt that has followed Jimin from his debut stage in 2013 to literally this very moment. Let's go back to where it all started. When BTS debuted, Jimin was positioned as the group's main dancer, a role that came naturally to him given his background as a top student at Busan High School of Arts, where he majored in contemporary dance. He was by every objective measure the most physically gifted performer in the group from day one. His flexibility, his body control, his ability to execute movements with precision and grace that bordered on otherworldly, these were never questioned. But his voice? That was questioned from the very first stage. During early performances of No More Dream and We Are Bulletproof Part 2, Jimin was performing the most demanding choreography in the group, the flips, the spins, the floor work, the power moves that required maximum physical exertion, while simultaneously being expected to deliver his vocal lines. And because he was working harder physically than any other member on that stage, his vocal output was naturally affected by his breathing. His lines came out breathy, slightly strained, occasionally pitchy, not because he lacked talent, but because he was doing the equivalent of running a sprint while trying to sing a melody. And haters grabbed those early performances with both hands and never let go. Those 2013-2014 clips became the foundational evidence for every lip-sync accusation that followed. And no matter how much Jimin grew, no matter how much his vocal technique improved, no matter how many stunning live performances he delivered in the years after, haters would always circle back to those rookie clips and say, "See, he's never been able to sing live." It's a moving goalpost built on a frozen moment in time, and it's been the most effective weapon in the anti-Jimin arsenal for over a decade.
But let's talk about what actually happened after those early years, because the evolution of Park Jimin's vocals is one of the most remarkable and well-documented growth stories in K-pop. Lie, his solo track on the 2016 Wings album, was a turning point. Lie is a vocally brutal song. It requires sustained high notes, rapid transitions between falsetto and chest voice, emotional dynamics that shift from whispered vulnerability to full-throated desperation, and it's performed with a choreography concept involving a blindfold and contemporary dance movements that are as physically demanding as anything BTS has ever done. During the Wings tour, Jimin performed Lie at every single stop, and the live fan cams from those performances tell a story that directly contradicts everything haters claim about him. In some cities, his voice soared with a clarity that sent chills down the spines of 60,000 people. In other cities, his voice cracked on the high note, and the crowd screamed even louder because they recognized the raw courage it takes to attempt that note live, knowing it might break and doing it anyway. Those cracks, those imperfect moments, those human vulnerabilities, they weren't failures. They were the most undeniable proof possible that Park Jimin was singing live, pushing his voice to its absolute ceiling, risking imperfection in front of tens of thousands of people because he refused to hide behind a track. A lip syncer would never crack. A lip syncer would sound perfect every night. Jimin cracked because he was real, and that realness is worth more than 1,000 perfect playbacks. Then came Serendipity in 2017, and if Lie was the turning point, Serendipity was the statement. This song was crafted specifically to showcase Jimin's unique vocal color, the breathiness, the airiness, the delicate, almost whispered quality that defines his tone. And during the Love Yourself tour, his performances of Serendipity were ethereal, mesmerizing, and unmistakably live. How do we know? Because of the ad-libs. Jimin added vocal ad-libs to Serendipity that were never in the studio version. Soft oohs and ahs, and whispered phrases that varied from night to night. Spontaneous vocal embellishments that responded to the energy of each specific crowd. In Seoul, his ad-libs were tender and intimate. In New York, they were more playful and energetic. In London, they carried a melancholy weight that had fans in tears. These aren't things a backing track can produce. These are the creative impulses of a live artist reacting to his environment in real time, and they're documented in hundreds of fan cams that anyone can access and verify. Now, let's address
Number 1. Jimin. And here we are, the summit, the peak, the one spot on this list that was never in doubt, never up for debate, never a surprise to anyone who has spent even a single day in the trenches of K-pop discourse. Number 1. Park Jimin, the member of BTS who has been accused of lip-syncing more times, more aggressively, more relentlessly, and more cruelly than any other idol in the modern history of Korean pop music. And I need you to understand something before we dive into this list. Jimin's position at the top of this list isn't just about frequency of accusations, it's about the nature of those accusations. It's about the way an entire subsection of the internet has built a cottage industry around attacking his vocal ability. It's about how a man who has dedicated his life to the art of performance, who trained his body and voice to do things that most humans physically cannot, has been repaid with a level of scrutiny and hatred that goes beyond criticism and enters the territory of systematic, targeted abuse. This is the story of the most controversial voice in K-pop, and by the time we're done, you're gonna understand exactly why number 1 says it all. Let's start with the root of everything, the thing that makes Jimin's lip-sync accusations unique, the thing that separates his controversy from every other member on this list, his voice itself. Park Jimin does not have a conventional K-pop voice. He doesn't have Jungkook's clean, stable power. He doesn't have Jin's warm resonance. He doesn't have these
deep baritone richness. What Jimin has is something far more divisive, far more polarizing, and far more misunderstood. A high-pitched, breathy, deliberately airy vocal tone that sits in a register most male K-pop idols don't even attempt to touch. His voice is light, it floats, it whispers even when it's loud. It has a quality that vocal coaches describe as intentionally ethereal, a stylistic choice rooted in contemporary and modern vocal technique, where breathiness is not a flaw, but a tool, used to convey vulnerability, intimacy, and emotional fragility. And that stylistic choice, that deliberate, artistic, trained decision to sing in a way that prioritizes emotion over raw power is what has made Jimin the single biggest target for lip-sync accusations in BTS's history. Because here's what haters do. They take Jimin's breathy tone and reframe it as evidence of weakness. He sounds out of breath becomes he can't sing. His voice is airy becomes he's not actually producing sound. The backing track is doing the work. He doesn't belt like other vocalists becomes he doesn't have the ability to sing live. Every single characteristic of Jimin's vocal identity.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your complete ranking. From Sugar at number 7, the rapper too raw to question, to RM at number 6, whose own mistakes proved his authenticity, to J-Hope at number 5, who danced through every doubt at Lollapalooza, to Jin at number 4, who built a voice from nothing and turned it into something extraordinary, to V at number 3, whose voice was so unique the world couldn't believe it existed, to Jungkook at number 2, who committed the unforgivable crime of being too perfect, and finally to Jimin at number 1, the most accused, the most doubted, and yet the most unbreakable voice in K-pop history. But before you close this video, I need you to sit with something for a moment, because this list was never really about lip syncing, not at its core. What this list is actually about is the cost of excellence in an industry that demands perfection but punishes anyone who achieves it differently than expected. Every single member on this list has been accused of faking the very thing they've spent their lives perfecting. Sugar's rawness was questioned, RM's growth was doubted, J-Hope's stamina was dismissed, Jin's determination was overlooked, Taehyung's uniqueness was rejected, Jungkook's consistency was denied, and Jimin's artistry was torn apart. 7 members, 7 different accusations, one shared reality, that no matter how much evidence exists, no matter how many live performances are documented, no matter how many vocal coaches and audio engineers confirm the truth, haters will always find a way to doubt. And that says nothing about BTS. That says everything about the people doing the doubting. Because here's what the lip sync accusation really is. When you strip away all the technical arguments and broadcast mixing excuses and fan cam analyses, it's a refusal to accept that someone you don't like can be genuinely talented. It's easier to say it's fake than to say I was wrong about them. It's easier to clip a 3-second moment from a 2-hour concert than to watch the full performance and confront the reality that these 7 men are extraordinary at what they do. The lip sync accusation isn't about audio, it's about ego. It's about people who have already decided their conclusion and are working backward to find evidence, ignoring everything that contradicts them and amplifying everything that supports their predetermined narrative. And against all of that, against the decade of doubt, clips, threads, viral posts, and relentless scrutiny, BTS has done the only thing that truly matters. They kept performing, they kept singing, they kept showing up on stages around the world in front of millions of people with live microphones and real voices and human imperfections that proved over and over and over again that what you hear is what you get. No tricks, no illusions. Just 7 men from South Korea who loved music enough to dedicate their entire lives to it, and who respected their fans enough to always give them the real thing. So the next time you see a clip online accusing any BTS member of lip syncing, Do yourself a favor. Don't react, don't argue, don't engage. Just pull up a concert fan cam, put on your headphones, close your eyes, and listen. Really listen. Listen to the breath catches between lines. Listen to the ad-libs that aren't in the studio version. Listen to the vocal cracks that prove a human voice is pushing past its limits. Listen to the crowd singing along so loud that the members smile mid-note and their pitch wobbles for half a second because joy is hard to contain. That is live performance. That is BTS, and no accusation in the world can take that away. Thank you for watching, thank you for staying until the very end, and remember, in a world of noise, the truth always sings the loudest. Peace out.